Hey everybody, Alex from AdaptableStrength.com here to bring you part 2 of the series So You've Never Lifted a Weight Before. So this is going to be designed for people who have never trained ever in the gym before and they're trying to find a way to get started. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of it is either assuming you are farther along than you are, or it's just so much information that you don't know where to start. This is designed to give you everything you need to know to get into the gym, not feel overwhelmed, and actually have a solid understanding so that you can enter the gym and feel more at home than you otherwise would. Because that's something the gym can really be for a lot of people, is a home, a refuge, and a safe space. So let's go ahead and get this going. The decision to lift is a very important one, and we're going to take you from that point. You have made that decision to start lifting. Part 1 is going to help a lot in terms of the pre-gym knowledge that you may need. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about what happens in the gym. The first thing that you're going to want to have is a training plan. And may feel a little daunting when you first look at it, but trust me, we're going to go over it again later on in much greater detail, and I'll walk you through even every exercise later on for it. So, the first thing to do is to figure out the framework for that plan. And what we're going to do is take the simplest approach possible. We're not going to worry about separating muscles individually into one day for that muscle or anything along those lines. We're going to keep it simple and do the majority of the body on every single day and just move on that way throughout. That's going to be a nice overall approach and keep it into a style that's going to allow you to learn the most efficiently you can. This is going to be very daunting to begin with, but what's going to happen is we're going to go into all this much more so later on, and it's going to become something that's going to look back on later, and it's going to feel so much less scary. But for now, just know that you're going to be hitting about 6 exercises, 3 days a week, or maybe even less often than that or more often. It depends on how you want to do it. But 6 exercises is a good way to hit everything twice a week and learn how your body functions. So that's my immediate recommendation. But let's go ahead and break this down into further detail. This is again assuming that you don't know much going in. So what are the different components of the workout itself? Well, to put it simply, your first thing is that your workout itself is just your session of physical activity, and that's it. It is the time you walk into the gym and you start moving to then you leave the gym. That's your workout. The workout itself is just composed of various exercises, so you can do however many exercises you want, but each exercise is just an individual movement pattern, and that's it. Now, you don't just do that once and move on. You have to have sets of each of the movement patterns that you are doing. So you're going to break them down into times where you are resting, then the time doing the set, and then you rest again. And those sets are just going to be simply repeating that motion as many times as possible for your reps. Sometimes it's literally as many times as possible, where you just go for a certain amount of time and then you can't do anymore and then you stop. So then you're going to be going for sometimes where it's the target amount of reps. You want to do it 8 times, cool, and then you stop. But either way, you're having that specific designated rest happening before and after the set, and that's how you separate out each individual set. However, there are multiple kinds of sets, specifically 2 kinds. You have your warm-up sets and your working sets. So the working sets are going to be the higher degree of effort sets. Those are the ones that are going to count to give you the most progress. They're the difficult ones. Your warm-up ones are going to literally warm you up. Like literally, it's actually going to increase the temperature of the muscles and your overall body as you lead into the real work. And it's going to prime you to be able to do the work in the safest way possible because your muscles are ready for it. No, so let's go ahead and see a not even bigger zoom in where we look at the actual order of operations for the exercise. The first thing you want to do is start off with a warm-up set that is really, really light. And you're going to build it up through as many warm-up sets as you need to make sure that you are safe. So that way, once the weight gets heavy enough that it becomes a struggle, you're actually ready and it's safe. So, once that difficulty becomes that high, they're now qualified as working sets. These are the sets that are really going to contribute to your progress. So, they're the goal. You want to make sure you do anywhere between 1 and 5 working sets for a specific exercise. And I'll have more in depth recommendations on that later on. So, don't worry. This is an overview, and we'll get to more specific things later on. And you're going to repeat this progress for each of the exercises. One of the biggest things I do want to stress is don't worry about starting off too light. I encourage you to start off too light. You are much less likely to get hurt starting off too light than you are if you start off too heavy. So, err on the side of safety. You're trying to set yourself up to start a hopefully lifelong healthy habit. In order to do that, safety is paramount. So now here we get into those recommendations. Let's take it for every single layer of the workout. First off, how many workouts per week? Generally, 1 to 6 is the recommendation. I would recommend 3 as a great way to start. You are then spending fewer than half of the days of the week in the gym, but it's enough that you're going to get a lot of practice in so you can speed your learning up to a pretty healthy degree. 2 is still fine, 1 is also fine. This is just what I think is going to give you the most bang for your buck and be time efficient. All right, now before the exercises. 3 to 8 per workout is generally a good way to go. I think 3 is a little too small of an amount to get as much learning as you can efficiently, but 5 to 6, that amount of exercises will give you enough repetitions in there that you'll get a good solid understanding at a pretty solid pace. Definitely much more so than 3 exercises per workout. And then as far as the sets go, you're looking at between 1 and 5 working sets, but 2 to 3 much more manageable to start with. So if you're looking at it in the way that where you are doing 6 exercises and you're doing 2 working sets, it's only 12 hard sets you're having. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's a good place to start. All right, and then as far as the reps go, technically you can go as few or as many as you want, but if you want a nice sweet spot, 5 to 20 is going to be a good way to go about it. And if you want to even make it a little more regimented, then 6 to 12 is going to be my general recommendation for someone starting out lifting. It's few enough that they're able to concentrate, but a high enough number that they're getting a good amount of practice in there. So here we're going to have an exercise that you're going to watch me do as a warm-up set. You're going to notice that all the reps are nice and smooth, they're controlled, but it's not hard. The first rep and the last rep are looking exactly the same. There's no difference in speed. I'm not trying really that hard. It's enough for me to get used to the motion. And that's about it. And then I'll go up in weight and everything until we hit the working set. Now, the working set is where the real progress gets made. Warm-up sets are nice to help learn and reinforce good movement patterns so that the working set can then be done as effectively and safely as possible. And you'll notice here that I am most definitely starting to feel the pain here, but I'm going to continue going on. And you'll see that the form is still consistent. However, it's slowing down. And when it slows down, I make sure to keep my standards high. The form standards are going to be high enough that I am still safe, but most definitely, it's a struggle, and I'm not going to be able to do much more, if any, after this set is done. And that's a true working set. So, one of the more common questions also is, how much am I supposed to rest in between my sets? And that's a very big it depends. So here is going to be your general framework. You're looking at between 30 seconds and 3 minutes, generally speaking, between sets. Now, that's going to vary a lot depending on the type of exercise that you are doing. Let's say you're doing a big set of squats. You might be closer to 3 minutes. However, if you're doing some calf raises, it might be closer to 30 seconds. It all depends. So what you want to look at is to be generally within 30 seconds to 3 minutes, but setting it up so that you know the first thing to reach failure when you do that next set is going to be your target muscle. And if your target muscle is not the first thing to hit that failure point, then it's time to rest more, not time to do the set. So here we have a few different examples of this. So we're looking at the few different variables in terms of when you should be doing the next set. You're looking at the failure for your ability to concentrate on the exercise. You're looking at your ability to breathe. You do not want to gas out before you do the final rep. But then you have supporting muscles as well. They're contributing to the movement in the target muscle. So the way we're going to look at this is here's a pie chart, and we're looking at how close to failure each of these factors are. So once something hits 100%, then you know that is the failure point. So right now, all variables here are equal. So we're going to take a more specific example. Here, we're looking at this, and if you notice, the target muscle group is 20% of the way to failure. Concentration 10%, breathing 20%, but the supporting muscles are 50%. They are much closer to failure than the target muscle group is. So they're not going to be the one that fails first. Therefore, you need to rest more. We need that target muscle to be the first one to reach 100%. So here we go. Next example. Target muscle's much farther along now. We're 30% of the way through. Concentration is nice. That's 20%. That's definitely before the target muscle. Supporting muscles are much better than that last example. They're 10% of the way to failure. However, the breathing is at 40%. You don't want to run out of breath before your target muscle fails. Running out of breath means you need to rest more. Now, this example is going to be the one where you are ready for that next set. The target muscle group is 60% of the way to failure, concentration's 10%, breathing 20%, supporting muscles 10%. That target muscle reaching failure first, now you are ready to do that next set. So this is a pretty illustrative way of doing it, and you'll feel the practical applications of this when you are training on your own. If you want a more concrete example of this, an easy thing to look at is a squat. Simple squat pattern. If you find that when you do it, your lower back is failing before your quads, then you need to either change your form so the quads fail first, or rest more so the lower back recovers enough that you can make sure the quads fail first. Those are your options. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the program more detail now. We've gone over the various muscles that we're looking at in terms of the targets. So now let's look at that in terms of day one in particular. You're starting off with your standing calf raise. That's pretty simple. Your calves are going to be the target muscle. It's in the name. Just like the seated hamstring curl. That's going to be your hamstrings as a target muscle. But we get into more of a complex motion now. We're looking at the leg press. Your quads are going to be the target muscle there. This is an exercise where that breathing may really be one of the things that fails first more so than your quads, since you have to make sure you watch your rest periods for that. It's going to be much simpler for the seated hamstring curls as well as the standing calf raises. So we then go into flat dumbbell bench for your chest, but now we have more supporting musculature that's going to be participating as well, meaning your shoulders and your triceps are going to support while your chest is the primary muscle. So we want that primary, the target muscle, to be the one that fails first. So you're targeting the chest for the flat dumbbell bench, and you're targeting your back for the lat pull down that's next. But for the lat pull down, your biceps and your forearms are going to contribute as well. So you want to make sure you're feeling your back more so than your biceps and your forearms. A lot of people have trouble with the form on that one, so don't worry, because we're going to be going over that more in depth in the next video where I show you examples of all of these different exercises. Then the final one is your dumbbell lateral raise, targeting your shoulders, but specifically your middle delts. And we're going to go ahead and again, watch a video on that, because that's one that people kind of take a little too literally and they throw their arms straight out to the side when they actually are supposed to be slightly in front of you. We'll talk about that more so later on. Now, when you are doing these day one workouts, we can have an example here for what your warm-up sets and your working sets may appear to be. This is not something that you should look at in terms of, okay, am I strong or am I weak in comparison to these numbers? Or am I progressing in the way that I should in comparison to these numbers? Those are going to be individual. This is an example. So when we are checking out the sets here, it's going to be in this format. You see 30x12 as the first warm-up set for the standing calf raises. What that means is you're doing 30 pounds for 12 reps. Or if you're going to be functioning in terms of the metric system, we can just change that to kilos, and it still stands. 30 kilos for 12 reps. 45 pounds or 45 kilos for 12 reps. And you can go ahead and just track that for each successive set. And you'll notice the working sets are going to then progress in a little bit of an odd way. If we take a look at the standing calf raises, we're saying 3 sets of 15. However, you'll notice it goes 75 for 15, then 75 for 13, then 75 for 12. And you might look at that and say, wait, what's going on? It says 3 sets of 15, but only the first set is at 15. And you're correct. Now, if you remember, we're talking about the effort where each exercise, the working sets, are supposed to be going until it gets to be really difficult and it starts to involuntarily slow down. And then you do a couple more. What that means is it's getting progressively harder and you're taxing your muscles to the point where all of a sudden, once you do your first working set, they're tired enough that your second set, you can't quite match that same amount of reps that you did as the prior set. So we see some drop off. And if you see a few reps drop off, and the effort is the same, that's a good sign because it means you're really, really taxing those muscles. They are not as strong as they were in the prior set. And so good job. This is one of the few times where not being able to match what you did previously is a sign of progress and a sign of good. It's a really weird set of mental gymnastics that has to be done because most often everyone's taught failure is bad, slowing down is bad. In the gym, it's the complete opposite. Slowing down is a sign that you're really pushing. Failure being reached is a sign that you really, really put a lot of effort into that and you got what you want, which is failure. It's a very, very odd thing, especially for those who are just starting out. It's one of the big hurdles my newer athletes experience is they try to all of a sudden start cheating their form because their weight start to slow down and they think that they're doing poorly because of that. It's not true. You can expect drop off. And if you want to see another interesting example of this is scroll down to the leg press. The leg press, you are going for 3 sets of 8. Fewer reps, which means fewer reps to have wiggle room with to be in that good range. So if we're looking at 3 sets of 8, you see your first set 270 for 8. Okay, good, solid. But the second set was 270 for 7. Little below that 8, and we don't have much room to change. So what you can do then is lower the weight to get higher reps again. So with that predicted drop off, we went from 270 for 8 to 270 for 7 to then the last set drop down to 240 to then do 8 reps. So you can predict that drop off. And you can look at the other examples here, pause it if you need to, and you'll see how there is a progression like that for all of the exercises here. So this should look a lot less intimidating now that we look at the whole program as a whole. You understand how each of these exercises is going to have their own warm-up sets, their own working sets, their own whole process. And it should feel less daunting now because you understand, okay, the rep is going to be the component of each set. We do enough sets for each of the exercises, and then the whole exercises create that whole workout. Cool. You now know every single step. You know how much to rest in between. And you can figure out how this then applies to you for how you feel. And all you have to do then is just analyze, all right, is that exercise actually a good one for you? Because you may need to substitute. But in order for you to make that decision, you need to understand what you're supposed to be feeling during the workouts. And there are some good things and there are some bad things. One of the easiest things to know is that if you're in pain, that's bad. Okay, but that's not a universal thing. There are different types of pain. So there's good pain and there's bad pain. I have it written down here as good sensations because not everything is a pain that you're going to be feeling here. Some of them are going to be a little more abstract than that. Like, for example, controlled stiffness. Like, what does that even mean? What it means is you are able to stiffen up parts of your body to support the whole system. And usually that involves your spine. You want to flex all the muscles along your spine in order to keep it in a good, safe position. So that's a stiffness that you are causing to happen, and it's going to keep you safe. And it's something done on purpose. So your spine then is comfortable itself and it's not in pain, but you're stiff around it. And you can contrast that with having pain in your joints. And you don't want to have elbow pain when you're trying to do any kind of chest press or a rowing motion or a bicep curl. That might be sign of something going wrong there, an injury that has taken place prior that's starting to flare up again, all sorts of different reasons. So you don't want to have involuntary stiffness or pain in your joints, but controlled stiffness is okay. And there's a lot more that goes on here. The biggest thing to make sure is that you're aware of the pain and you can feel on your own whether it feels like it's the one you're supposed to be having, like a gradual muscle burn that gets worse as the set goes on but goes away quickly as it goes after. You can compare that to a sharp pain or a sudden pain, and you're going to have a nice contrast between those two, where the nice one's going to be the muscle burn and the bad one's going to be the sharp or the sudden pain. And some of this just comes with practice and feeling how things progress. But it's definitely things that you have to think about, because there's a lot more here that's not listed that's still going to be relevant for you and your situation. So keep that in mind, because we've gone over so many different things. And you can see there's not much left that we'd have to go over to have you have the knowledge basis that you need to get in and start lifting safely. We've gone over so much in terms of the workout organization, what kind of exercises to choose or to look at for the program, what really comprises a set is going to be the reps. You're going to look at how much you have to rest or warm up, and then you're going to look at, okay, well, how hard you need to have you go to make it be a working set. And it'll keep on progressing over time, and you'll be able to fine tune these things beyond the general broad viewpoints that I have in here, and it'll become more specific to you. So the next episode, we're going to be looking at performing each exercise and how to track them over time. Once you have that, you have the entire framework to have you start going to the gym and understand exactly what is happening. So if you need any more, I'd be happy to help out. You can find more information for free at adaptablestrength.com. I've got some short form information over at Instagram. It's going to be at Adaptable Strength. If you just want to skip everything and just talk directly, you can send me a DM there, or just email me at alex@adaptablestrength.com. Thanks, everybody. I hope that helped you out. And just a friendly reminder, you're not doing this alone.